In a typical criminal trial during this era, you won't find a room full of theatrics. You will find ordinary proceedings, structured around a jury trying to make sense of the facts. When an expert witness takes the stand to discuss microscopic hair comparison, they bring serious credentials. They arrive from a federal laboratory, carrying formal training and years of casework. The scientific step they describe performing is also entirely valid. The examiner looks through a microscope to confirm a crime scene hair and a defendant's hair share visible physical characteristics. If the testimony ended right there, if the analyst simply told the jury these items look alike, the justice system would be functioning exactly as intended. The breakdown of this practice does not happen at the microscope. It happens with a single sentence delivered to the jury. Instead of saying two hairs look alike, the examiner relies on specific phrasing. They testify that the questioned hair is consistent with the defendant's hair, associated with the defendant, or is a match. To a human brain sitting in a jury box, those specific words do not register as a subjective visual opinion. They sound like a definitive mathematical measurement. The observation the expert offers is real, but the language they use to describe it carries a weight of mathematical certainty that the physical evidence simply cannot support. The phrase consistent with is technically defensible. The crime scene hair shares characteristics with the defendant. But practically, the phrase is devastating because of what it leaves unsaid. While the hair matches the defendant, it shares those exact same characteristics with an entirely unknown number of other human beings. In statistics, we call that population group the denominator. To know the significance of a match, you have to know how rare it is. This specific type of testimony operated completely without a denominator. Delivering a statistic implies a foundation. It implies that a population study exists, that someone has gone out and counted the variations to find out how common a trait actually is. For this method, no such study had ever been conducted. The vocabulary did all the heavy lifting. It delivered the illusion of hard data in a space where nobody had assembled the data to quantify it. Now, place yourself in the position of the people tasked with interpreting this language. When a juror hears an expert declare an item is consistent with the accused, they have no framework to evaluate the weight of that statement. Does consistent with mean a 1 in 10 probability or 1 in 10,000? The factual answer to that question is simply that nobody knows. But the rigid, authoritative format of expert testimony was the least likely place to deliver that uncertainty to a jury. The lack of data was obscured, leaving the jury to fill in the blank with a false sense of absolute confidence. This flawed semantic leap went unchallenged in courtrooms nationwide due to 4 ordinary compounding conditions that created a vacuum of accountability. First, the testimony came backed by immense institutional authority. It originated from the FBI laboratory, whose examiners trained analysts for state and local labs, spreading the practice outward from the center. Second, because this predated forensic DNA, there was no independent scientific method available to test the claim and prove an association wrong. Third, court-appointed defense attorneys rarely had the funding or the technical experts to mount a challenge. Finally, it sounded like science because it partly was. The foundational microscopy was legitimate, and that legitimacy effectively acted as camouflage, making the flawed linguistic leap much harder to isolate and attack. Every one of these conditions is reasonable in isolation. A respected laboratory, a careful examiner, a jury deferring to expertise. The failure was completely structural, built by people doing exactly what they were asked to do. For decades, this unchecked semantic framework ran smoothly inside a legal system that entirely believed it was functioning properly. Then, forensic DNA testing arrived. DNA provided the very first scientific tool capable of looking back at an old hair association and testing whether the testimony had actually been right. When the system finally began to ask that objective question, some of the answers that came back were not what anyone expected.